Progressive Insurance. You can give us a call on the Dr. Pepper call line at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. ESPN Nation presented by Dr. Pepper. It's not college football season without the delicious taste of an ice-cold Dr. Pepper, the ones fans deserve. Two things for you guys to weigh in on today. Week 18 in the NFL with all the backup quarterbacks playing, as CC has pointed out, as they've played all year, basically, this year in the NFL. Is it a playoff preseason week, or is it a playoff primer? Plus, if Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns win the Super Bowl, is he a Hall of Famer? All three of us say yes. Pat Costello, one of our producers, is adamant that it is an absolute, unequivocal no, that he should not get into the Hall of Fame. 888-SAY-ESPN is your telephone number to join us in the Dr. Pepper call-in line. But yesterday, Davante Adams, stud wide receiver for the Raiders, talked about the interim head coach, CC's former teammate, Antonio Pierce, and the future in Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously who I wanted. That's my vote, and I've been vocal about that, and that's that's basically how the whole locker room feels, and with good reason. I mean, he's come in and done a great job, and he's continued to win us over. It's not just the comfortable thing. I think having AP here will be it'll be good for this organization. He kind of embodies what it means to be a Raider, and that mentality, that swag, and all the things that he endorses is the things that I believe in. So it's easy for a guy like me, especially having dealt with him a little bit this year now and gotten to know him and see his evolution, in front of the team, and all those things, all the different fields of being a head coach. So definitely rooting for him.
When we're talking about head coaching openings in the NFL, I skip right over the Raiders because I assume that this is a done deal. This should be the easiest coaching hire that we see in the NFL this season. He's come in and done an amazing job. He, as Davante Adams said, and Antonio Pierce, embodies what it means to be a Raider. He cares about the franchise. He cares about the history of the franchise. He knows what a Raiders team is supposed to look like and feel like. And more importantly, he's got the locker room on his side. That's one of the most important battles that a head coach can face, is to get the players buying into the messaging. And they have that. I mean, Davante Adams was miserable at times this season. Mm-hmm. He did not try to hide it in any way, shape, or form. He has completely transformed. You see how much fun he's having, how much fun the other players are having. They want to play for this guy. And I think the Raiders would be foolish not to give Antonio Pierce the head coaching job.
Yeah, Smalls, the ability to communicate has always been a strong suit for AP, even when he was a middle linebacker for the New York Giants. And this is a guy that came up the hard way in the NFL, undrafted player, and he's found a way to make a decades-long career and become a Pro Bowl player and a Super Bowl champion. And I think those credentials warrant a certain baseline of respect, but then also seeing him do it at the high school level and have relationships with a lot of these guys that he's now coaching in the NFL, I think that matters. But ultimately for AP, what it's going to come down to is being able to make the case to owner Mark Davis. And to me, finishing with a winning record as the interim head coach matters. Right now, he's 4-4, and actually beating teams that don't have losing records matters. So far, he's only got one win against such teams, and that will be against the Kansas City Chiefs. If he can find a way to take care of business against the Denver Broncos, again, a team that doesn't have a losing record, I think that only bolsters his case in order to be the full-time head coach. But it feels like that's the way that things are trending when it comes to the Raiders. All of the job openings that we potentially talk about, we really don't talk about that one, even though it technically is open, because I think so many people in NFL circles want Antonio Pierce to be that guy. That's how well regarded he is, and for good reason.
I am totally 1,000% okay with the idea of Antonio Pierce getting an opportunity to be the full-time head coach. No issue with it whatsoever. But if I'm Mark Davis and I own that team, the player's input is meaningless to me. I have to be honest. I don't care. You were not successful this year. You weren't successful for Josh McDaniels, and you weren't that successful for Antonio Pierce. You were just more successful for Antonio Pierce than you were for Josh McDaniels. So, if I'm going to make that decision, it can't be because the players want him. They're a losing team. They were not a winning team. As CeCe just pointed out, they need more wins under Antonio Pierce, and obviously there's only one game left, to secure it. Now, maybe they would have had a winning record if Antonio Pierce started the season, had the offseason, all that kind of stuff. That's what I would be banking on if I'm Mark Davis. But this idea, when players are out there campaigning for the interim coach, in many ways, it's because the interim coach is not the previous coach, and it's more of an anti than a pro. In this case, I absolutely think they want this guy. They absolutely want this guy. Mark Davis should make the decision that Antonio Pierce is the guy, but not because Davante Adams told me that. This is not Patrick Mahomes coming out there and saying Andy Reid needs to continue as head coach. I don't care. We're a losing team.
But the team tells you that in the way that they play, though, in the way of wins and losses. You were 3-5 with Josh McDaniels. Right now, you're 4-4 with AP. I mean, I think it matters in terms of whether or not they're able to finish the season on the high note in winning 3 of their final 4 games. That actually makes a difference in the mind of the owner. If you give this guy more time to implement his program, establish his type of culture, and get the quarterback position settled, then maybe, just maybe, you can find yourself being more competitive in the division, in the conference overall. So I think that has to be a part of the mindset. And let's not forget what happened a few years ago. You decided to get rid of Rich Bisaccia as the interim head coach after he led your team to a playoff berth and hired Josh McDaniels. That was an all-time bad mistake. You looked at the good that you had and you went after better, and it ended up being much worse. So you destabilized the coaching spot by virtue of what you did last time when the team clearly responded to the interim head coach and Rich Bisaccia amidst a lot of turmoil. I just don't see Mark Davis winning if he decides to do the same thing to Antonio Pierce.
Also, how would you describe the Raiders' quarterback situation this year?
Bad?
Suspect.
So no matter who's the head coach, it was going to be difficult for them to overcome those situations. It's not as if we had the Raiders projected to be a Super Bowl team this year. And then,
I thought they were going to be better than they were.
Well,
I was wrong.
But then as the season went on, there was attrition, there's personnel questions. I think what he's done with the personnel that he has been remarkable.
Right, but this is my point. Like, because I screwed up with Rich Bisaccia doesn't have any impact to me on my decision-making with Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce deserves to be the head coach because Antonio Pierce deserves to be the head coach. Like that's to me. I'm not going to look at
No. Hold on. I don't want you to misconstrue what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying is when you see the team, the players respond to a different head coach and they actually have success,
right,
that should factor into the math. So, I mean, I get what you're talking about. What the players are saying doesn't matter, but what you do speaks louder than anything you could ever say. And the players responding to AP in the way that they have in the final 8 games and hopefully the final 9 games, to me, that speaks volumes. This team is actually competitive. Even in the games that they lose, they're actually competitive. It wasn't necessarily the case when Josh McDaniels has been the head coach in the first year and a half of his tenure. So I think that's the part of it that has to be factored in. Similarly to what we saw with Rich Bisaccia after John Gruden. That has to matter when you try to make the determination of what direction you should go if you're Mark Davis as your next head coach.
Also, when you're implementing a culture and an identity of a team, the first hurdle for you to overcome is to get the players on board. He's already jumped over that hurdle.
But getting those players on board results in not a lot of wins.
But it's not going to happen overnight, Evan. It's not like you can snap your fingers and turn a team into a Super Bowl contender or to completely change course with what's happened over the season. I think the fact that he's already made significant inroads in the culture and identity point of the Raiders, he completely transformed the way that we view that team and the way they view themselves in a matter of weeks.
I'm totally fine with that. I just am not going to make a decision based on players who are telling me this is the guy when they haven't been dominant. They've been better, obviously, and it's not going to change overnight. I am 1,000% okay and on board with the idea with the Raiders saying Antonio Pierce is our full-time head coach because we believe this is a small sample size of what he will do in the future once he implements his own system, his way, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not because Davante Adams gave this passion plea yesterday. Because I could criticize Davante Adams as much as anything else. CC you just said moments ago, I don't care what Deshaun Watson feels about the Browns like right now. You're paid $1 gazillion, just root on your team. I don't care what Davante Adams thinks. If you were miserable the first half of the season, you're paid $1 gazillion.
But I care how he plays, though. That's the difference. Like, Deshaun Watson ain't on the field.
Right.
I care how Davante Adams feels because of how he's played. Like, it's been a clear difference between what he's looked like with AP as the head coach versus Josh McDaniels.